They were in love, newly married, and setting out for a romantic weekend getaway through the deserts of Texas. That was March 14th, 1986. They never came home. For 16 years, their families believed the earth had swallowed them whole. No wreckage, no clues, no suspects. Until a pair of tourists stumbled upon something strange in the sands, something buried beneath years of dust, heat, and silence. What the authorities uncovered next was so gruesome it stunned even the most seasoned investigators. Before we dive into this real-life nightmare, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a story the world tried to forget. Part 1. The Disappearance of Cristian and Melanie Torres. March 18th, 1986. Carmen Vasquez, distraught and shaking, walked into the Austin Police Department. She had come to report the disappearance of her sister Melanie Torres, 26, and brother-in-law Cristian Torres, 28. They had left their home in San Antonio just 4 days earlier for a weekend retreat in West Texas. The couple had been married for 2 years and planned to celebrate their anniversary somewhere peaceful and remote. Just the two of them, their Ford Bronco, and the open desert. Melanie called Carmen on the morning of March 15th. She said they were near the New Mexico border and had stopped to take photos of the desert landscape. That was the last anyone heard from them. The investigation begins. Assigned to the case was veteran detective Ray Herrera. He'd seen missing persons cases before, but this one felt off from the start. There were no arguments, no financial problems. The couple was well-liked, hard-working. Cristian was a mechanic. Melanie worked as an office assistant. They had no reason to vanish. The police traced the couple's last confirmed movements. Surveillance footage from a Junction, Texas gas station showed them filling up and buying snacks. The clerk remembered them asking about remote camping areas. That same evening, they checked into a motel in Sanderson. The room was found intact the next morning. Clothes folded, toiletries untouched, and Melanie's camera still on the nightstand. The bed was never slept in. Clues in the desert. The photos on the camera told a chilling story. Desert trails, isolated rock formations, a few candid selfies. But one image stood out. In it, Melanie pointed to a patch of dunes. Behind her, barely visible, was a second vehicle parked near the horizon, one that didn't belong to them. The photo had been taken just before sunset. It was the last known image of the Torres couple alive. Eyewitness testimony. Over the next 2 weeks, investigators combed the area. Nothing turned up until a local restaurant worker came forward. Maria Elena Gutierrez, a waitress at a Sanderson diner, recalled seeing a woman matching Melanie's description being dragged into a pickup truck outside the restaurant around 10 p.m. on the night of March 14th. She also saw a man trying to intervene, presumably Cristian, before being overpowered. Fearful due to her immigration status, Gutierrez hadn't reported it sooner. But she had written down part of the license plate, RX7 something. It was the first real break. The suspect emerges. A statewide search of vehicles led to a 1983 Ford pickup registered to Russell Wayne Kowalski, a convicted felon with a history of kidnapping and sexual assault. Kowalski, then 42, was on parole in March 1986. When police found him weeks later in a remote campsite near Big Bend, his truck was stained with blood that matched Melanie's type. Ropes, shovels, clothing fibers, all matched evidence found at the scene of the abduction. Kowalski denied everything at first. Then the story changed. Part 2. The confession and the cover-up. Detectives pressed hard. For 2 days, Kowalski refused to answer questions. Then on day 3, he cracked. In a cold, windowless interrogation room, he muttered 5 words. They never left the sand. The room went still. Detective Herrera leaned forward. What do you mean? Kowalski described a scene straight out of a nightmare. After following the couple from the Sanderson motel, he waited until dark. He approached their vehicle parked near a dune formation off an unpaved road and pretended to be a lost traveler. He pulled a gun. He tied Cristian up, took Melanie, drove them both into the desert, deeper than any patrol would likely go. There he assaulted them, threatened them, humiliated them. Then came the worst part. He claimed he buried them in the sand, alive. Quicksand? When detectives asked for details, Kowalski said he'd found a soft spot in the desert near the Rio Grande, an area where the ground moved under your feet. The more Cristian fought, the faster he sank. Melanie, according to Kowalski, gave up. He described how he left them partially buried and walked away. I didn't have to kill them, he said. The earth did it for me. It sounded like lunacy. But desert locals told Herrera of an area near the Bend where underground springs created marshy terrain, quicksand in dry disguise. Most hikers avoided it. Some swore it swallowed whole cattle. Police launched an aerial and ground search across 70 square miles of the Chihuahuan Desert. No remains were ever found. Kowalski was charged with 2 counts of murder. Though without the bodies, the case was hard to close. He was sentenced to life in prison in 1987. But the story didn't end there. 16 years later. In May 2002, a rare weather phenomenon changed everything. Flash flooding struck West Texas, causing severe erosion along old desert channels. One such area, known for collapsing ground, cracked open near an old streambed. 2 hikers, a married couple from Oklahoma, spotted something protruding from the mud. At first it looked like driftwood. Then they saw the jawbone. Authorities sealed off the area and brought in forensic teams. Within 48 hours, they'd recovered 2 nearly intact skeletons. DNA confirmed it. Melanie and Cristian Torres had been found, still wrapped in shredded canvas rope. What the earth preserved. The condition of the bodies stunned forensic scientists. Because the ground had stayed cool and oxygen-deprived for nearly 2 decades, the remains were partially mummified. In Cristian's hands were bone fractures consistent with defensive wounds. In Melanie's ribcage, a single fracture and a hairline crack at the base of her skull. They hadn't died instantly, but they had died buried. The location matched the area described by Kowalski, down to the curve of the riverbank and the distance from the highway. He had told the truth. Part 3. A Town Reckons. The news of the discovery sent shockwaves through the Torres family and the surrounding communities. 16 years of unanswered questions vanished. Melanie and Cristian were not missing. They had been left behind, discarded in the desert, buried in a pocket of quicksand so deep and so still that even seasoned search teams had passed over it. But now that their bodies had been found, the real question wasn't just how it happened. It was why it took so long to listen. The missed warnings. In the wake of the discovery, journalist Sofia Morales, a local investigative reporter, reopened public records and parole board hearings from 1985 and 1986. What she found painted a damning portrait. Russell Wayne Kowalski had been paroled in late 1985, just months before the Torreses disappeared. His parole file included 3 previous accusations of abduction that had never led to convictions due to lack of cooperative victims and procedural missteps. He had been arrested once for allegedly stalking a female high school student in El Paso. The charges were dropped quietly. His caseworker even flagged him as volatile and unstable in remote environments. Yet the parole was approved, and no post-release supervision was ever enforced. Local authorities in Sanderson later admitted that Kowalski had been seen near campgrounds and rest stops multiple times in early 1986. One ranger even filed a complaint that he'd been too curious about tourists. But nothing was followed up. Why? The local sheriff's silence. The answer came during a tense 2002 town hall in Sanderson. Sheriff Alan Rusk, then retired, was asked directly whether his department had suppressed warnings or ignored the Torres disappearance. His response shocked the room. "I did what I was told." Kowalski had connections with state wildlife officials. He fixed trucks for them, helped with border patrol. I was told to let him be. The room erupted. Families of other missing persons came forward. Some claimed their relatives had also vanished in remote desert corridors. Others said Kowalski had been seen offering rides to young women and loitering near wilderness campsites. What had once been written off as rumor now felt like evidence ignored. The letter then came the final piece. In September 2002, Marcus Torres, Cristian's younger brother, received a letter postmarked from the prison where Kowalski was held. In it, Kowalski wrote only this: "I wasn't the only one who knew where they were. The desert hides bones, but people hide guilt." The letter was signed, no return address. Officials couldn't verify who else may have been involved, but it left a chilling possibility. Someone else may have helped cover the bodies, or worse, knew they were there. Part 4. The Echo in the Sand. With the Torres case finally resolved, one might expect the story to end there. Justice served, the truth unearthed. But it didn't. Because when investigators re-examined the newly opened site, the pocket of quicksand that preserved Melanie and Cristian's remains, they made an eerie discovery that pointed towards something much bigger. Just a few yards from where the bodies were recovered, beneath another collapsed patch of terrain, forensic teams found a second burial. An unrelated set of bones. The new remains were smaller, skeletal, with evidence of clothing fibers and a plastic wristwatch still intact. Forensic anthropologists determined the remains belonged to a male between 14 and 17 years old. Time of death? Roughly estimated between 1984 and 1986. There were no dental records to match. no missing persons reports in the area matching the description. But among the bones was a silver pendant, the kind given to children as a first communion gift. Engraved on the back was a single word: Miguel. Investigators immediately suspected a connection to Kowalski, and they were right. A pattern emerges. Cold case investigator Evelyn Ramirez, who had worked the Torres case during its original investigation, had kept meticulous notes. When she learned about the unidentified remains near the Torres site, she cross-referenced them with a series of disappearances from the mid-1980s. She found two matching cases. Miguel Soto, 15, reported missing in Alpine TX in July 1985 after leaving home to go fishing. His body was never found. Angela Bryn, 19, last seen hitchhiking near Del Rio in September 1984. Her backpack was later recovered in a river 10 miles east of the town. Both had gone missing within the same 80-mile radius where Kowalski was known to camp. Neither had been connected to him before. But now, Miguel's pendant and the discovery of the second grave changed everything. Multiple victims, one predator. Ramirez dug deeper. In a span of just 3 years, 7 young people had disappeared in that stretch of Texas desert, all between 1983 and 1986. Some were dismissed as runaways, others were poorly investigated. But now, with Melanie and Cristian's case reopened, all those files were brought under scrutiny. The pattern was unmistakable. All vanished in spring or summer. All were last seen near wilderness routes, rest areas, or border roads. All disappeared during years when Kowalski was confirmed to be roaming West Texas without strict parole supervision. One man, one region, years of missed signals. And only now was the full extent beginning to emerge. The confession that never came. Authorities petitioned the prison warden for one last interrogation with Kowalski, but in a grim twist of timing, he suffered a stroke 2 weeks before the meeting, rendering him largely non-verbal. He would never answer questions, never reveal how many he'd taken, never tell what he buried or where. He died in January 2003, taking his secrets with him. But the sand still held the evidence. Part 5. The Desert Remembers. After Russell Wayne Kowalski's death in early 2003, the investigation into his past took a new form, one led not by detectives, but by the families of the missing, journalists, and the community that had once looked away. The story of Cristian and Melanie Torres, 2 people once thought to have simply vanished in the wild, had broken a dam. Now, every old case file was being reread, every rumor rechecked. The desert had given up its silence, and people were finally listening. Remembering the forgotten Miguel Soto's family, long relocated to El Paso, returned to Alpine to hold a memorial after DNA confirmed the second set of remains were his. They buried what was found in a small ceremony near the Rio Grande, just downstream from where the Torreses were discovered. There was no casket, just an urn, his first communion pendant, and a photo of Miguel holding a fishing pole at age 13. The inscription read, "The desert kept you, but not forever." His mother, Lourdes, said something few could forget. "I used to believe the desert was where people vanished. Now I know it's where truth waits." Policy and legacy. In response to growing pressure, the Texas legislature introduced new protocols for missing persons investigations in rural regions, particularly those involving parolees or known offenders with histories of violence. Named the Torres Reform, the new law expanded investigative resources, required long-term tracking of parolees, and mandated independent review of cold cases every 5 years. For many families, it came too late, but for others it represented the one thing that hadn't existed in 1986, accountability. The last trail. Marcus Torres returned to the desert in late 2004, retracing the path his brother and sister-in-law had taken 18 years earlier. He reached the same cracked, sun-scarred basin where their remains had been uncovered. There he installed a small steel marker. It read, "Here lies silence undone. Found, not lost. Loved, not forgotten." For the first time in years, the desert felt quiet, not empty, just still, like it had said what it needed to say. What do you think? Was Kowalski working alone? Or was there more to uncover in the sands of West Texas? Let us know in the comments. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that silence isn't always peace, then like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because we'll keep telling the stories the desert tried to bury until every voice is heard.